We're at 7:03. So I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Montclair City Council along with the other agencies. Obviously, this is the first meeting that we've been holding these chambers since mid-March of 2020, which has been 14 months. And I think it's great that we're back here again. Obviously, we're here because our coronavirus cases are real low. We're in the yellow tier, and that allows us to come back in these chambers along with opening City Hall, opening parks, and opening businesses. I also want to recognize that our newest council member, Ben Lopez, this will be his first time in these council chambers sitting here at the dais. So congratulations there. So we'll move on to the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to ask the city clerk to identify those persons, please.
Okay, the invocation tonight will be led by Pastor Josh Matlock of Bethany Baptist Church, and the pledge will be led by Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Everybody please stand.
Father in heaven, we thank you so much for the fact that we are here today. And we can be here, and we thank you for how you've watched us and seen us through this past year. We know it's been a year of many, many trials, lots of ups and downs. We've learned things, we've grown, we've transformed, we've grieved. We've been changed, God. And Lord, I pray through it all that we would have been humbled and that we would seek you and look to you in ways that we never may have before, acknowledging that you are God. And Lord, it is in this prayer that we bow our heads to acknowledge who you are, that you are the God of this universe and that you are in control. And we look to you for wisdom. We look to you for grace. We pray your blessing upon this city. We pray that this city would be a city of justice, that would be a city of love and mercy. We pray that you would bless our council and this meeting tonight. We pray that you would help us, Lord, to be a city of healing, a city of peace. And we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me as we salute the flag of our nation. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could please have roll call?
Councilmember Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Martinez,
Present.
Councilmember Johnson,
I'm here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rue,
Present.
Mayor Dutray.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item we have on the agenda is presentations. And this evening, we're going to recognize Waylon Sen. Is he in the audience? There he is. And he's the principal of Our Lady's Lord School. So as you know, we recognize the public in terms of their assistance to this community as a result of the COVID-19. So this evening we'll be providing a community recognition award. And Mr. Sen was nominated, I believe, by one of the parents at Our Lady Lord School. And this is what the parent wrote down. As Mr. Sen is the first-year principal at Our Lady Lourdes. In March, during the initial lockdown, Our Lady Lourdes was unprepared for the pandemic due to the lack of devices and to allow for a strong curriculum for online learning. In fall, that changed when he acquired additional devices for every student from another school. He began a strong online program which included PE, music, Spanish, and art, as well as free tutoring for students. This allowed for our students to continue their academic excellence, all while virtually learning. As for a larger community, we arranged for the sale of extra desks that Our Lady Lourdes had, and he found more. These were sold to our residents for only $10 to help with the distance learning. Mr. Sen has been resourceful in a year of limited resources. He's always thinking creatively, Our Lady of Lourdes received limited funds through the CARES Act, as many private schools, and he was able to build an extraordinary program and transition students back into the classroom. So with that, I'm going to come down here. Why don't you come on up? Right over here. So on behalf of myself and the Montclair City Council, we want to give you this recognition, and we want to say thank you for your efforts in making it easier for our community as we've been dealing with our pandemic issue for the last 14 months. So I want to give you a pen, or a pen actually attached here. I'm going to give it to you, and we'll do some pictures if you don't mind. Great. So tradition will shake hands, so I'll do this and we'll do the bump. There we are, see? All right, thank you very much. Would the council like to say some words? Oh, Mr. Sin, I'm sorry. My council colleague asked me, would you like to say some words?
Well, thank you to my school board president, Jessica Pleites, for the wonderful nomination. And I have a great staff. While I'm the principal at Our Lady of Lourdes, I'm also the principal at St. Margaret Mary School. And being able to have both schools to interchange resources has been amazing, and I have a lot of good people that help make that happen. Technology director, a wonderful business manager to help make things run smoothly. So, and thank you to a wonderful community. Our Lady of Lourdes community has opened their arms and hearts to me, being a new person coming in, and getting to know the city of Montclair a little bit more. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate it, and thank you, Jessica, again, and Dr. Torres for allowing me to take over and put my plan in action and be able to have the freedom to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, before I go to public comment, again, I'm going to remind the members of the public that you are able to participate by phone or by Zoom. And as you have done in the past, if you wish to participate by Zoom, the city clerk will help me on this one. You will hit the hand. Am I correct? Raise your hand if you wish to speak under public comment. And if you're on the phone, I believe you will hit *6 on your phone if you wish to speak. Am I correct, city clerk?
*9 to raise your hand.
I'm sorry, *9 to raise your hand.
And
if you're on the
*6 to
phone.
unmute.
Okay, I can see now. I can see the screen here. Okay, and then so we'll begin first. If we have any members in the audience that wish to speak, do we have any blue cards been submitted? Do we have one person who will speak? Okay, then come on up. And are we still doing blue cards?
Yes, I have a couple cards.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a couple cards.
For speakers under public comment or
Yes.
other items?
Public comment.
Okay, I apologize. So, Isabel, for you, mine starting, and then afterwards, you mind filling out the white card, blue card.
So can I talk right now?
You can talk right now. I'm going to give you 5 minutes.
Yes. Okay, first of all, well, thank you for letting us being here in the chamber. It looks beautiful. And second of all, I want to congratulations Ben Lopez for being a city council, Denise, and Carissa. Thank you very much, and I really appreciate that, this time that you guys are giving me. And I'm very happy that now we can raise our hand in the public. I'm very happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, our first speaker for public comment is Carolyn Raft.
Hello,
Good
Caroline.
evening, council members, mayor, Mr. Starr, Ms. Robbins. First of all, it's so nice to see you guys back on the dais. You know, it's kind of weird to sit back here and look at you up there without being up there, but I'm kind of enjoying it anyway. Secondly, I see that you're doing Zoom and telephone tonight. I would like to see if you guys would continue doing that, because a lot of times public can't be here, and they would like to know what's going on. And if they can't make it, at least they can tune in at home. And it's especially elderly, because sometimes they really can't make it. So I'm hoping that you guys will make it a policy to continue doing it, okay? So thank you, and that's it.
Well, thank you.
I want to ask her something, John.
Oh, go ahead.
Mrs. Raft, if I may, I have a question for you. I know that you are still working with vector control, and can you please tell us when we can get some relief from the buzzing that's around us?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said I know that you are still working with vector control,
Yes, I am.
and I'm wondering when we can anticipate some relief from the buzzing that's going on around us. There's these little gnats are flying everywhere.
I don't know about the gnats, but I was going to bring you some additional information on the next meeting, because Vector Control now has a special trap. As a matter of fact, I have one in my yard, and when it's there, I haven't had any trouble so far this year and last year with the ankle biters and also the regular mosquitoes, because the trap attracts them. The female, they lay their eggs, and the chemicals inside kill it, and so therefore they don't hatch. And I was going to ask anyone that would like to have one in their yard, they put it where your animals cannot reach it. Okay, so that would help, and just let me know, and I'll make sure that you get one.
Thank you.
Okay, and next meeting, I'll bring you some more information about. Right now, everything is very low on mosquitoes. There's just not hardly anything around. All the cities are very low, in Montclair especially.
Well, they must
So
think
if
I'm
you have
special.
something, let me know.
Yeah, they must think I'm special because they're all around me.
Gnats,
Outside,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. So I think we're all plagued with those every year, unfortunately. So, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Next is Rob Pipersky.
Good to be back. Okay, I am one of the negotiators for the MCCA bargaining group. We will begin negotiations soon, and I want to be prepared and prepare you for what we need and want. I speak for our bargaining unit, but my message does and will resonate with every bargaining unit within this city. My goal is to meet with every bargaining unit representative and become unified in our request for fair and equitable salaries for all our members. We are asking for average salaries for every job title and classification. Our bargaining unit did an informal survey and found members of our group ranged as low as 22% below their counterparts with other cities, and one member being 5% above average. Why do we have such a disparity within our bargaining group? If the city were to grant a 5% raise to our group, the lowest paid member would still be 17% below average, and the highest could be potentially 5 to 10% above average. This is unacceptable. I look at our city council. Mr. Mayor, before you retired, you were a project manager for the city of Rialto. Your salary in Rialto was substantially higher than a project manager in Montclair. Actually, all Rialto positions, police, fire, public works, as well as city hall employees, earned higher salaries. At the same time, you were a council person for this city. You and I had discussions about this disparity over several lunches and ride-alongs when I was a patrol officer. You promised when we had a sustainable funding source, this pay disparity would be rectified. We now have an additional 14 million added to our general fund. Councilperson Johnson, before you retired, you worked for Kaiser Permanente. The philosophy was to pay employees 10% above average and bring them up through the organization and have long-term employees who feel valued and respected. These employees stay with the organization, and Kaiser no longer recruits, and they now have reduced training costs. To train a police officer or firefighter at Montclair costs $80,000 to $100,000 per officer or firefighter. In the police department alone, we are hiring 17 officers, probably 9 firefighters, with the potential to lose 5 more. A quick calculation shows we could spend $3 million to replace these people when we could spend substantially less to retain them. Additionally, every person we lose to another city will cost us considerably more in our PERS unfunded liability cost. We need to stop throwing taxpayer money away. We must work to retain our employees and encourage others to seek out Montclair as a place they want to have their careers. Councilwoman Martinez, you work for a law firm. I am sure your pay is fair and equitable. Ask yourself, how would you feel working 10 to 20% below your counterparts? Would you feel valued and appreciated? Councilman Wu, Councilman Lopez, are you fairly compensated in your professions? Why is it okay for our employees to not be paid average across all positions and titles? When some job classifications are doubling and tripling duties, they are below average for any one of their duties. They should be paid an average plus 5, 10, 15% salary bonus for the extra responsibilities they are called upon to perform. We're in a good position with options to take care of employees. The general fund will now see an additional $7 to $14 million, which could easily handle this expenditure. We currently do not have the cash needed to fund this option without dipping into our reserves. Another option is to add $2 to $5 million to the upcoming bond. Depending on the cost to bring salaries average, the bond measure could spread this high cost of getting salaries average over 30 years, the same way we are spreading pension costs over 30 years. The payoff rate for the bond would be approximately $2.4 million per year to be paid by the additional funding source to the general fund. We could now spend maybe $2.6 million or whatever increase may be to bring the salaries of all employees to average. So the city never falls into this salary disparity gap again. We ensure cost of living and salary surveys for all positions every year or every other year. Our new funding source will be providing needed funds for years to come. Thank you.
I believe we have Zoom
Yes.
speakers now.
So Bruce Culp would like to speak on items B1 and B3, and I'm not sure if he also now wants to speak in public comments, so I'll go ahead and
Okay.
let him state that. Okay, Bruce, you should be able to unmute yourself now. Not sure if you wanted to speak during regular public comment.
Okay, there you go. All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, yeah, I did want to speak on item C1 and C3 later, but just wanted to say welcome back to the council chambers. I'm still in the middle of my vaccination shot, so I hope to be menacing you later in person in mid-July, but for the point right now, I'm going to be keeping it safe and staying at home. And as one of the other speakers mentioned, it sure would be great to have you continue Zoom meetings even after things become a little bit more normalized. Like she said, there are people that are homebound and need ability to speak publicly from time to time. I also wanted to make a statement. I've been watching the news lately. Another local government losing their city manager through either resignation, and it just reminds me of how good our city is run. The staff, the city employees, our city manager, Mr. Starr, has done an outstanding job, and along with the council. You know, when I look at the city of Upland and the disarray that their local government is, I know that, you know, in between the employees and the council. There could be disagreements and things like that, but you all seem to find a way to work together and make it run like a smooth machine. I really, really, as a resident, it's so nice to watch, at least on the surface, hopefully, and hopefully even behind the scenes that you guys are working together and making the city run really, really well. So I just want to, throw my appreciation out to the entire city council and the staff, and especially city manager Starr, for all your excellent work in keeping things. I have some more comments about the city bond a little bit later, and in kind of in line with Mr. Papersky, or maybe in direct opposition. But either way, again, I support all the Zoom meetings, and wish you guys continued success. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bruce, you still there? You still there, Bruce?
Yes.
I was wondering, which consent calendar items do you want to discuss again?
If it's possible, I would like to have items C1. I'm sorry. Let me see here. Items
One.
B1 and B3 pulled, if that's possible.
B1 and B3? Okay. All right. We will deal with that under consent calendar. Thank you. Okay, so we're now completed public comment, and now we will go under public hearings. And we have the first item, the only item of public hearings, and this is consider adoption of resolution number 21-3310. I'm going to ask for staff presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm also opening up the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As you'll recall, we had a presentation on the pension obligation bonds as well as infrastructure bonds at an April 20th City Council workshop, so I will not get too elaborate, nor will I cover the items that were discussed during that presentation. But the council is asked to consider adoption of resolution number 21-3310, authorizing the issuance of pension obligation bonds. This would transfer the city's current UAL obligation that we pay annually to CalPERS to the pension obligation bonds. That would produce an estimated $30 million in savings through the amortization over a 24-year cycle. If we use scenario 3, which was one of 3 scenarios that was presented to the City Council at that April 20th workshop. If the city does not elect to use POBs, pension obligation bonds, the city's annual UAL payment is projected to increase from a current annual payment of $5.4 million to nearly $8.8 million in 2033, before that UAL obligation would start to gradually decline over the course of a 30-year period in which CalPERS is endeavoring to try and achieve 100% full funded status through this process. POBs would stabilize the city's annual payment to approximately $4.6 million over the 24-year payment cycle. Again, you compare that to the $5.4 million that we are projected to start paying in 2022. The city would continue to make annual payments on the normal cost range component, which is separate from the UAL. The UAL being the unfunded accrued liability component, which represents currently an estimated $79 million, and then the normal cost range component, which is about a $2.1 million annual payment. That payment would continue. It would, of course, increase annually as well, but the increases to the normal cost range are not going up to the same level as the UAL goes up, primarily because we stay abreast of the normal cost range component, whereas the UAL liability, the $79 million, is affected by the 7% estimated return that CalPERS projects it receives annually. So that amount goes up by at least 7% on an annual basis. In addition to that, if CalPERS is unsuccessful in achieving their projected return on their investments, then that loss of additional revenue is transferred to the UAL component, as well as the normal cost range, but primarily it hits on the UAL, which is why we see such massive increases in the UAL on an annual basis. Over the past 2 decades, CalPERS has made significant changes to its assumptions used in calculating its pension liabilities. The agenda report lists, I believe, 6, 7 different items that we have realized over the course of the last couple of decades that causes that UAL as well as the normal cost range to increase. First one is an increased overall unfunded actuarial liability, as the discount rate has been reduced from 7.5% to 7%. The reduction of that discount rate results in less earnings projected by CalPERS, which means that they project the loss onto the unfunded liability, and that is why, one of the reasons why we see an increase in the UAL. We also anticipate that CalPERS will be lowering the discount rate even more so in the future. In fact, probably in the next year or two, we expect to see the 7% discount rate come down somewhere in the neighborhood of 6.7 or 6.5%. Ultimately, their objective is to get it down to 6%. And if that occurs, then of course, we will see the UALs increase massively beyond what we are currently seeing. So the fact that you're considering a pension obligation bond right now is very smart for the council to do, and probably, in my estimation, would be the correct course for us to pursue as we try to deal with this massive obligation that not only Montclair, but every city in California and most municipal agencies throughout the nation must somehow address going forward. Number 2, sharp increases in annual payments due to CalPERS' problematic investment strategies and consistent failure by CalPERS to achieve a rate of return on investments that meets investment portfolio goals. I just discussed to a large degree on my last item that particular issue. Number 3, steep investment losses during the Great Recession and failure of the pension fund to fully recover from investment losses. You may recall that back in 2008, 2009, CalPERS lost approximately 45% of its investments and has been trying to recover from that massive loss. They are now up to around $365 billion, but based on who you listen to, whether it's university studies or CalPERS, the total obligation is somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 billion to $1 trillion, with the university studies putting it at the higher amount. So if it's $1 trillion and they have $375 billion in their portfolio, they have a long way to go to fully fund all of the pension obligations that they are required to meet. If it's around $500 billion, which is where CalPERS is, puts it closer to, then they're still a long way off by about $125 billion from reaching that objective. And it is that amount that CalPERS is basing its UAL payments and its normal cost range payments on. So if the number is actually larger than that, then that's a different scenario we all have to deal with down the road, if and when CalPERS comes to make that decision. Number 4, misguided and inaccurate assurances provided to public agencies regarding improvements to public safety employee retirement plans and the subsequent increase related to that decision. You might recall that back in 2002, when we migrated to improved pension formulas, we were advised by CalPERS that there would be no increase on our pension liabilities. But of course, once Montclair and other agencies, in fact, most of the agencies in the state of California made improvements to their pension plans, the very next year, we were hit with significant increases in our pension liability costs. Number 5, employment payment holidays that underfunded pension liabilities. CalPERS has had a past practice of declaring pension holidays where they told their clients that they did not need to pay any pension costs for a particular year because CalPERS was superfunded. Of course, we know where that went. The holidays turned out to be nothing more than local agencies underpaying on their pension obligations, and now that has come back to haunt us. Number 6, underfunded employee service credit purchases that pushed future associated pension liabilities onto the employer. For many of the past years, in this past couple of decades, CalPERS has provided that employees could purchase airtime, which is time that they did not actually work. And in allowing them to purchase that airtime, CalPERS had a formula calculation that required the employees to pay an amount of money for that airtime. Well, it turned out that the formula that CalPERS was using was completely inaccurate, and where somebody would make a purchase of 4 years for approximately $30,000, The actual cost should have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. And because CalPERS policy is not to go back and push that obligation back onto the employee, their practice is to push it onto the employer. We have realized, not only us, but every agency where employees have purchased airtime have realized the cost impact related to the purchase of that airtime. And then number 7, rate smoothing policies and practices that initially produced artificially reduced rates, followed by successive years of amortized UL payments over this 30-year period that we're currently experiencing. So CalPERS has had a practice and policy of regularly redoing their actuarial tables, redoing their mortality tables, and figuring out what the impacts will be on the agencies that are members of CalPERS. They redo these policies, they redo the evaluations every 3 years, and that rolls into their estimations as to what the impact will be on local agencies. Now, of course, as we are in this 30-year period that started back in 2015, when CalPERS decided that they wanted to become 100% funded, these mortality tables and their actuarial tables are having a more adverse impact on local agencies than what we experienced in the past. Their way of dealing with that was these rate smoothing practices in which they leveled out the payments on local government agencies as they moved forward in trying to meet their obligations. And these smoothing practices, of course, did nothing more than to, again, push the liability further into the future, and that is what we are doing right now. Now, of course, you've heard that CalPERS has talked about this practice now being leveled out to a 22-year cycle. Well, that is only because of the fact that we have now 6 years of this 30-year effort behind us already. So it was easy for them to make that leap to that they were shortening this cycle to become 100% fully funded. But that, again, is because we've already have a number of years behind us in which they've attempted to do that. The council is well aware that the funding growing pension liabilities have challenged our fiscal capacity to produce balanced budgets on an annual basis. Of course, we've gone through a number of steps and discussed that every year with the council in the budget message. Certainly controlling labor costs is one of those objectives that we've had to pursue in order to maintain our pension obligations, as well as to provide services to the community. I think that we've done an excellent balance in producing balanced budgets for the city council, as well as still trying to provide a livable wage to employees, and more importantly, meeting our service obligations to the community. That is why we are here. We're here to provide services to the residents and businesses of Montclair. And I think that we've been able to do that without any diminution of services in that regard. We've not really asked employees to take reductions in wages or benefits except at the peak of the Great Recession. And then we quickly tried to climb out of that and tried to provide regular improvements to wages and benefits on an ongoing basis thereafter. And certainly we will endeavor to continue to do that, particularly as the city moves forward in a better position to try and meet our obligations all the way around, not only in the issue we're discussing this evening, but as it relates to services to the community and certainly improvements to employee conditions. Through the issuance of POBs, Montclair can achieve control over the level of payments required to pay debt service on the bonds, enabling the city to better plan pension expenses for budgetary purposes while concurrently producing short and long-term savings. The first step in moving forward with the pension obligation process is the judicial validation process. The only issues before the court in that process are the legal ability of the city to issue pension obligation bonds and whether the sale meets state constitutional requirements. Based on precedent, the court is expected to enter a judgment in favor of the city. In other words, that we are legally permitted to issue pension obligation bonds. Resolution number 21-3310 authorizes staff and bond counsel to submit the necessary documents to start the judicial validation process. A process expected to take at least 90 days, could be up to 120 days, given the current court environment. and the slowdown in the court process due to the current pandemic. And approve issuance of pension obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $85 million. Staff will report back to the City Council on or about August of this year as the next actions for issuance of the bonds. City staff is also seeking approval to retain various parties listed in the agenda report to assist with bond issuance. And before you on the dais is a correction to the agenda report. That is this document that I'm showing to you right now. You can see in red that we are adding Mark Alvarado of Government Financial Consulting to serve as the certified public accountant for this process going forward. Fiscal impact, the issuance of pension obligation bonds may reduce annual costs related to the unfunded accrued liability that the city has been experiencing. And the city is currently obligated to pay CalPERS, as I've already indicated, $79 million. We would be transferring that $79 million obligation to the pension obligation bonds. This is not a new liability that is being imposed on the city. Rather, this is simply transferring one liability to another asset, in this case, pension obligation bonds, and those pension obligation bonds will produce a lower annual payment for the city. As I indicated, in 2022, the UAL payment would be about $5.4 million. Moving it to the pension obligation bonds will lower it to about $4.6 million. And of course, that $4.6 million will remain stable up to the point of maturity of the pension obligation bond, whereas the UAL payment will continue to increase up to about $8.8 million, as I indicated earlier, in 2033, and then it will start gradually declining from there. So creating that stable annual payment, we think is key and important to this process going forward. Based on pension obligation bond scenario number 3, again, that was presented at the April 20th meeting, the impacts would be as I just indicated. If we continue to make our UAL payments, the total annual payment to CalPERS would be $141,653,510 estimated, whereas if we go to scenario 3 on the pension obligation bond, it would bring our total payment to $111,741,590. Of course, that is based on current interest in the market. Because this process will take about 120 days, there may be some fluctuation in the interest rate. Could go up, could go down. If we had pursued this process in November of last year, for example, the annual payment, had we gone forward with pension obligation bonds at that time, would be about $4.3 million instead of the $4.6 million. So you can see that the increase in interest rates since then has already produced a potential increase of $300,000 in that payment schedule under a pension obligation bond if we went forward with it at this point in time. Staff recommends the City Council adopt resolution number 21-3310, providing for the following actions. 1, authorize the issuance of pension obligation bonds to refund certain pension obligations to the city. 2, approve the forms of the trust agreement, the bond purchase agreement, and the authorization of judicial validation proceedings related to the issuance of pension obligation bonds. 3, authorize a negotiated sale of the pension obligation bonds to Hilltop Securities, Inc., the underwriter, with certain parameters. 4, authorize the city manager to execute the trust agreement and the bond purchase agreement. And 5, authorize the city manager to execute contracts for services of bond counsel, disclosure counsel, trustee, municipal advisor, CPA, and underwriter. And online with us this evening is Robin Thomas from Hilltop Securities. Robin did the presentation at the April 20th workshop, as well as Danny Kim with Nixon Peabody. He will serve as bond counsel during the process. So if you have any specific questions that Robin or Danny can answer, they are available online to respond to those questions. That concludes my presentation of this item.
Well, thank you. And just for clarification, I know we discussed this at the workshop about 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, actually. And so the process, if approved tonight, is that it will come back to the city council at a later date. The staff report states perhaps as early as August of this year. And at that time, the city council will receive an update of what the estimated basis of payments. We also will look at the adoption of the preliminary official statement and the continuing disclosure certificate before we go out for bond issuance. Am I correct there, City Manager Starr?
Yes, you are correct.
So there is so again, just for council members, this will come back to us in August before we proceed with issuance and bond, authorized to issue bonds at that time. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I
ahead.
may respond, by the way, to a statement that was made earlier by a member of the audience regarding adding additional monies to the pension obligation bond and use them for wages, that is not permissible. We cannot do that. You cannot attach wages or benefit-related costs to any bonds, whether it be something like a pension obligation bond or an infrastructure bond. The requirements and the restrictions on bonds are specified in the issuing documents, and to do so would, one, it wouldn't get through the bond council. Secondly, if we were even to attempt to do that outside of oversight of bond council, we would be in violation of the issuance documents, and the bonds would be subject to recall. So that is not a practical approach. Not only that, but I also need to mention that you do not commit fixed amounts of money to ongoing obligations. Salary increases that are based on a fixed amount of money that is not recurring only results in creating a difficulty as to how you're going to deal with the ongoing cost component related to continuing to pay for the salary increases and improvements to pension benefits. So that is not something that the council can consider.
And just to clarify that, City Attorney, we're not in mean confer here on the council chambers, so we should not be discussing employee bargaining issues here on the dais. So with that, I'm going to move on to, I think I'll start with public comments. So we have members of the public, they wish to speak. Andrea?
Yes, Bruce Culp would like to speak on this item.
Okay, let's get Bruce on board. And I see his hand, or I see somebody's hand there.
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Bruce, so you'll have 5 minutes.
Okay, I missed the workshop, but I tried to read through most of the document presentation of that and listen to the video. It's quite a complicated matter. I'm not very familiar with how CalPERS and pensions work in the public employees arena. So I'm speaking from a very inexperienced position, but it seems to me that getting this bond is from a resident standpoint of the city is probably the best idea. It seems to reduce the overall costs to the city, and so I fully support trying to reduce costs. Obviously, it's going to be paid with general fund or revenues from the city, which since we recently passed the sales tax increase, hopefully that money will be able to cover some of it. I suspect it will still be a little bit of a deficit, so we'll still be on the hook outside of the sales tax revenue for additional monies to pay these bonds off, which leads me to the fact that we've had cannabis ordinances that would have stated that they'd raise an additional millions of dollars in revenue. There's not many other options that allow the city to raise that much money in revenue. So I really encourage the city council to have the city bring those ordinance up for a vote, so you guys can get that additional revenue into the city. Unless the city's just making money hand over foot that I'm not aware of. I fully support these bonds. I know there's 3 different options. I have no idea which one's the best. I'm sure that through the analysis, you guys will make the best decision on that. And my question, I just had a couple questions in regards to all of these bonds are to pay past obligations. So my questions are, what's being done to prevent these future CalPERS to get further in depth for us? So I'm guessing that labor negotiations are part of that. And so what are the components in those labor negotiations? I know you can't talk too much about it, but is there is there work being done so that in the future, that we're reducing our liability and exposure to the additional debt through these employee negotiations? I'm fully in favor of paying our city employees a fair wages. I think they do an outstanding job and they need to be paid near their peers. But we are a small city with a limited population and a limited revenue sources. So that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So I thank you and look forward to hearing the answers.
Thank you. Mr. Starr, we'd like to respond to at least I think the first question for sure.
Well, first, I do want to say that there are no Measure L dollars that are being committed to the employee pensions or for payment of the pension obligation bonds. This is simply a transfer, again, of a debt that the city is currently meeting, and the dollars that are already in the general fund budget that are committed to making the payment to CalPERS for the unfunded accrued liability, the UAL, those dollars will simply go now towards the obligation of the pension obligation bonds. In fact, there will be a reduction in the amount of general fund money that would have to be committed to making the payment on the pension obligation bonds. So Measure L dollars have nothing to do with the city's ability to meet its obligations under this process, or for that matter, under the existing UAL obligation that we have been meeting. That has been met with the general fund monies that the city has received with or without Measure L, and the pension obligation bonds, because it is a lesser amount, will certainly be able to be met with the general fund monies that are already committed to that purpose. Requested in the question for a response on how the city might address future growth. That has already been taken into consideration. What we are going to be proposing in the budgetary process is that we are going to use 2022 payment on the UAL as the base year. That payment on the UAL is, as I indicated in this presentation, about $5.6 million, $5.4 million. That will be our base number. And then we are going to take the UAL, the pension obligation bond annual payment, which is going to be $4.6 million. The difference is about $800,000 on an annual basis. That $800,000 will go into a pension obligation, or it is our recommendation to the city council that that money goes into a pension obligation bond amortization fund. That money will accrue on an annual basis at the rate of $800,000 plus interest. And that money will be used to control any future UAL, should that occur, which we expect will be on a minimal basis going forward. And if, in fact, it is on a minimal basis, then the amount of money that continues to accrue above that, we are asking that the city council consider that we get at the 20-year point, 4 years before the maturity on the pension obligation bonds, that the council consider that that money that is in that fund be used to pay off the pension obligations 4 years earlier. That way we will produce even more savings for the city and get rid of that pension obligation bond debt service 4 years earlier than otherwise anticipated. So we think that this strategy will not only provide for the ongoing, any future increases in the UAL, which we believe will be minimal, but will allow for the early retirement of the debt on the pension obligation bonds. And then as to the statement that that this pension obligation bond deals with past obligations, no, in fact, the pension liabilities are an ongoing obligation. They deal with not only employees who have retired in the past, but will be dealing with future employees, as well as employees who are living but serving as annuitants under their pensions. This addresses all of that. The UAL is an unfunded liability that not only addresses our obligations from the past, but for the future based on CalPERS projections on their actuarial tables and their mortality tables. So as I indicated in the presentation, CalPERS does these studies, determine what the impacts are going to be on the pension liabilities. These impacts roll into the unfunded accrued liability as well as into the normal cost range, and that is what CalPERS uses to determine what our obligations are. So this process deals not only with the past, the present, but also the future. And we hope that by eliminating the UAL, that gives us greater flexibility to deal with other issues in relation to running the government of Montclair.
Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome.
I think we will close the public hearing, and then we'll bring this matter back to the city council, and then we'll start with council members. Do they have any questions?
Do I need to put in another card?
Come on up. You have 5 minutes. So we'll reopen the public hearing.
When I was mentioning, I absolutely support the pension bond. I think it is the greatest thing the city can do. It's going to save us a fortune over the years. In no way did I construe that we would add any monies to the pension bond. If I implied that in any way, shape, or form, I'm sorry, that was not the case. I read the pension bond, and I know we could not add anything to it. Now, as far as future, that I'm not so sure of. But I wanted to let you know that I absolutely support the pension bond 100%, and no way did I want to add anything to that pension bond. So, anyway, that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to clarify that issue, if there's anything else. Okay? Thank you, sir.
Okay, I don't see anybody else want to speak, so we're going to close the public hearing, bring the matter back to the city council. And who wants to go first? I have nobody on my list here, so if you want to speak, got to push your mic to speak there. Request to speak. Any hands, any questions? No? I don't see, no? Anybody want to speak? Okay, maybe I'll lead off then.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I did. Do you no longer have the thing on there?
Yeah, you gotta do this.
Which one?
You gotta hit that again. So you do the same thing.
Ah,
Just hit that again, and then who sizes it to? Now, if you want to push the request to speak. Okay, I'll start with Councilmember Lopez.
thank you. The rookie needs to learn the technology, I guess. Since the 20th meeting, where we discussed this, I read further the presentation that we gave. I did some searching of my own on the internet, consulted other cities, nearby cities that had done this. I know that the city of Ontario went with option 3, and they did so about 6 to 8 months ago, is what I was told, and it seems to be working for them. I would just say I'm uneasy going with option 3. I would prefer to go with option 2. I noticed the staff report on page 7, last paragraph, only gives an example of the POB scenario 3, and there is nothing in here with respect to the scenario number 2. But the differences that I want to point out with respect to scenario 2 and 3, and hopefully majority of my colleagues will go along with this. The amortization period for scenario 2 is 18 years, from 2022 to 2040. The savings under that plan is $39,183. In scenario 3, the amortization period is 23 years, so it's extended by 5. Total savings is $29,911,920, roughly a $10 million savings, depending on the differential. For those that have tracked me and known me, I've been leery of bonds in theory. I understand, however, that they should be considered, particularly when we're looking at pension obligations and our liabilities. I think it's just a given thrown into the mix that needs to be considered and not shunned. I just would feel a little bit comfortable if we tighten the length that we're going to refinance, if you will, our debt, and even if it is by 5 years. I don't think there would be any detriment to going with scenario 2 as opposed to 3. It's a shorter time frame, a shorter period. It accomplishes virtually the same thing in a shorter amount of time, as opposed to extending it 23 years out, and if not more. Thank you, Mr. Starr, for explaining the 800,000 amortization fund that we would use, that would accrue interest, and if there's any offset, future offsets or increases rather, from CalPERS, that would be used to address that concern. That put me at ease with respect to that. A question that I would have is that $800,000, that could not be touched for any other purpose. It should an emergency or disaster arise within the city, correct?
Well, it would not be in a trust, so it would be available for other purposes if the council directed it for that, but that would not be the intent.
Okay. All right. Yeah, my colleagues, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with scenario 2. If we're going to finance and if we're going to do this, I think let's just lengthen the number of years, and we get it at even more of a net savings than scenario 3. And that's what I'm comfortable with. I'm just not comfortable right now with scenario number 3. But that's just me. I'm 1 of 5.
And Mr. Starr, I believe in consideration of options 1, 2, and 3, that's a discussion more so at our next meeting?
Well, it's not a decision that you have to make now. Yes, that's
Exactly.
correct. It
Right.
could be put off to the future. Right now, it's really about the judicial validation process, as well as appointing the individuals to assist in this process
And
going
at that
forward.
meeting, that future meeting, will be provided more actual financial information of all 3 options, including what the actual payments will be for each option.
Yes, that's correct.
So we'll have more accurate data at that time, so.
And we're talking August?
We are talking August. And scenario 3 was included as the sole one, just to give you as an example, and it was the one that seemed to be preferred at the workshop.
Thank you. Okay, the next person I have here, I thought it was Mayor Pro Tem Rue. I'm not sure.
Listed 4th in queue, so there's...
Okay, then we'll go Councilmember, City Manager Starr, you're on here too. You wish to speak?
Oh, no, I'm on there.
All right, let's do this. So I can hit the Vance. So Vance. Okay, Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I just got my question answered. I think in the workshop that we talked about the differences between option 2 and option 3, and if my memory serves me correctly, which I think I just heard, we actually have a greater benefit from option 3. And there's also my thought that this is not written in stone. Let's say, for example, it goes forward now, but in 10 years, 20 years, whatever number of years we choose, we can relook at it and do something different if this council should choose to do so. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, when we bring this back in August, you'll have the option of considering the scenario that you want to select from. And then if you want to refund the pension obligation bonds, you'd have to wait 10 years before you could do that, and then pick, a new scenario at that point in time. But yes, 3 was the choice because it provided the flexibility and the ability to create this pension obligation bond amortization fund.
Thank you. And I understand that. I just want to make sure that after August and after everything is done, it is not engraved in stone. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right, next speaker I have is Mayor Pro Tem Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In looking at this, rather than getting into the details of 1, 2, or 3 as options, I had the question of if we could refinance this in the future at some point. Apparently, the answer is yes, we could. I do know that in looking at many other cities in the region, both here in San Bernardino County and in LA County, they have been happy with their PERS bond, their pension bond. Several cities adopted it in 2018. A few have adopted it since, and it seems to be so far working well for those communities. One of the things to realize in many cities, especially cities such as Montclair, retail is not what it was 10, 20, 30, 60 years ago. we're looking at the Montclair Plaza or Montclair Place, and it opened in 1968. It's a very different retail environment. Now, a lot of people are shopping. I don't do a lot of it online, but a lot of people shop right online. They use their phone, they use their computer. And we're not having the same type of sales tax we used to have. So retail has changed. In fact, so much so, meetings I'm on for work all 2.5 weeks and another 2.5 weeks on some things, is that the capital markets are not reacting well to retail right now, simply because they're worried about the future of retail. Now, who knows what will change in another 4 or 5 years? I can't predict the future. But we do know that retail, which this city is dependent on, is changing dramatically. We may not have the retail revenue in the future. So this is an opportunity for us to find a way to keep our promise to the employees in the past, the present, and those who will be here in the future, that we will be able to commit to that PERS for them. For those who may not understand, PERS is the Public Employee Retirement System. It's a defined benefit pension plan. And it's in government. I'm in private sector. I don't have a defined benefit pension plan. But it is available for many employees in county, city, other types of local government. And that's a promise we make to them. And this will help us to keep that promise. I could go on about a lot of things as far as different options and things of that sort, but that's not what's before us tonight. What's before us tonight is on the judicial validation proceedings. So I will just leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Lopez, you have?
Yes, a follow-up. Mr. Starr, did you say that the report was only giving scenario 3 as an example because option 3 only gives us the option of having an amortization fund?
Well, through the process I explained, by using 2022 UAL payment as our base, and then the lower payment on scenario 3, the $4.6 million, it created that $800,000. So if we were to go with, for example, scenario 2, the ongoing payment would be at least $200,000, I believe, starting higher than the 2022 UAL payment. So there is no difference there for me to start recommending to you putting money into a amortization fund. Doesn't mean that you can't do that and use other general fund monies for that purpose. But by using this base year and recognizing that it's already an obligation, that $5.4 million payment is already an obligation of the city, but we can reduce that obligation, that is what makes it more comfortable to make that recommendation to you. If we don't use scenario 3, that option appears to go away as far as creating that amortization fund, unless we put no money into that fund. But I wouldn't see a point of doing that at that point then, because we can just make a decision at any point in time based on revenue that's available in the general fund to pay off the pension bonds earlier if we can afford to do that.
So then there would be no option to have an amortization fund in option 2?
I wouldn't be making the recommendation because
Okay.
because it would require new monies.
Okay. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I will, my preference will be option 3 right now, but we will know a lot better in August when we get the actual financial information. I may switch from option 3 to option 2 once I see that data. Nevertheless, Mr. City Manager, question I have for you, in 2010 or around there, what was our annual payment, UAL payment at that time?
In 2010,
Around
the URL
2010.
didn't exist. The URL did not come into creation until 2015, when CalPERS decided that they were going to go on this path of 100% financing in 30 years. And so what they did is they took the employer rate and split it into two components. the normal cost range, and the UAL. So the employer rate was significant. It's not what the employer rate is now, because the employer rate then had both of these incorporated into it. The employer rate looks much more favorable now, because it's a much smaller number, because it doesn't represent the full cost of the pension obligation. That UAL represents a big part of that now. There are a lot of factors to explaining pension costs and what they truly mean. So, for example, if the agency wanted to withdraw from PERS, it would probably cost us somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million to withdraw from PERS. No agency can withdraw, and in fact, to my knowledge, only 2 agencies have ever withdrawn from PERS, and both of those were small agencies in Northern California. One, I believe, was a utility district, and the other one was a city. And they were penalized by CalPERS by reducing the pension payouts to their employees by 60%. But theirs were much smaller numbers. They were numbers that they could realistically deal with, but most municipal agencies can't. And so in recognizing their failure to actually keep track of what CalPERS actually owes on their liabilities, they decided to break out the UAL, which they defined as that underfunded accrued liability component, which they blame on their actuarial tables and other factors, which we discussed at the beginning of this presentation, that they say caused the pension obligations to increase significantly. And then there's a normal cost range, which they argue is, well, these are your normal costs if everything else was perfect and you didn't have all this underfunded liability, then this is what your cost would be.
But our 2010, our payment obligation, pension payment obligation annually, also if you all include their unfunded liability portion.
Right, and I would put it at around 4
Compared to it
million.
is today, right now, we're paying 5.4 plus another, what's the employer portion?
2.1, and then there's what the members pay as well. So you'll recall that back in 2010, we were paying it all. We were paying the employer rate as well as the member rate.
But I believe back then, 2010, it was more like closer to 2 to 3 million.
The total payment would have been about $4 million at that time. So if you look at today and you look at the unfunded liability, the UAL payment at $5.4 million, you look at the normal cost range at $2.1 million, and then you add the members, what they're paying, and you can put that at around probably about $1.6 million.
Okay.
You can see that we're already pushing $10 million if we were still paying everything
Right.
today.
Versus the 4 million, so 6 million, so essentially it's gone up by $6 million in 11 years. And it's
Yes.
projected to go up another $3 million, I believe, in your staff report here, by 2032. I think you had, so we have been discussing this issue for the last 11 years when we began to see pension costs go up. We've been scratching our heads, and what's the solution? Obviously, we asked our employees to start paying their portion, which they agreed to back in 2012. And we continue to scratch our heads as we knew costs would keep going up. We did discuss pension obligation bonds about 3 years ago. I know there was a lot of hesitation because of risk factors, that especially from staff. And we are here now, and I think this sounds like the solution to this long-term problem, this gorilla that we've been dealing with. And this will allow us to stabilize this pension payment. In fact, we may be able to reduce it. And then going forward now with additional funds from Actuarial, we can now hopefully address other issues in this community. And so I'm really excited that we've gotten this far. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Bill Rue to speak. And hopefully he'll say a motion as part of his.
Well,
Comments?
yes, Mr. Mayor, that's what I did have in mind. Before
Go
I
ahead.
get into that, I too will wait to make a decision on which of the options I prefer, although I may have one in my mind right now that looks good, I want to see all of the
Right.
information.
And we'll see that in August, yeah.
And because of what I do for a living with legislation, I want to see the whole process. So with that, I would like to make a motion for resolution number 21-3310, authorizing the issuance of bonds to refund certain pension obligations and to be read by title and number only.
Okay,
I'll second that.
so we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Rue, second by Councilmember Johnson. Okay, so there you are. First electronic vote in the history of the city of Montclair. I can only imagine what Harold Hayes will say right now. Okay, this motion is adopted 5-0. Thank you. The next item is consent calendar, and I'm going to first ask any members of the council wish to pull any consent calendar items. I'll start to my left, as I traditionally have done in the past. Everybody on the left? Anybody on my right want to pull a consent calendar item?
Mr. Mayor, I'll pull item B1, B as in boy 1, B as in boy 3.
B1 and B3, and you're pulling that for yourself or Mr.
For myself, but I would have, even if.
All right,
Mr.
so happens, so what we'll do is, I think I'll just go back to the way you used to do it. So, we'll have a motion for items, I'm gonna abstain on item A1, so when that motion takes place, just, denote me as abstaining. So I need a motion for items A1, A2, B2, B4. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will make that motion.
Okay, is there a second motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lopez. So again, we will take a vote, and just for, again, I'll be abstaining on item A1, as I was absent. There you are. So those items are approved, and then noting again, item A1 is 401 with myself abstaining. Okay, now we'll just go on their pool consent calendars. We'll go with item B1, and I'm going to allow, actually, what I want to do is I'm going to take B1 and B3 in combination for Mr. Bruce Culp, and then I'm going to allow him to speak once he's ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, you have 5 minutes for both B1 and B3.
Okay, well, they'll be pretty short. For item B1, this is for the Pacific Electric Trail Emergency funding. And I think in the last meeting, I spoke in favor of that. I mentioned the importance of that trail, uniting communities across. I've, made many a friend along that trail over the years. It's ability to unite cities together and provide a lot of healthy options for many residents of not only Montclair but surrounding cities. It brings a lot of people from surrounding cities into the city of Montclair. I know I've seen a lot of people before the break in the Montclair portion of the trail was built directly to the Trans Center. I was watching people getting off trains and taking their bicycle home from work. So again, that bridge is actually a very, very important connection, not only into the city of Claremont, but in the future, it's going to be critical to the San Antonio Creek Trail when the city of Montclair starts work on that. So my thought is I know that there's I think about 500,000 being put to it to get a regular bridge. My personal opinion is, this is going to be a critical juncture between the Pacific Electric Trail and the San Antonio Creek Trail once we start developing that. And I would just ask that if there happens to be any additional funds in that contingency funding, that there be at least some engineering and design work on that junction there so that it can, that later on we won't have to spend as much money joining those two trails, and possibly if there's any additional funds that can be put to that so that we can begin work in that area on that. So that was that's just my little conversation on B1. On B3, again, I have spoken on this item before. I was a little worried back when we authorized funding for this. I thought, that this is a little invasion of private residents' privacy. I know that it has good work for the police, and it's been stated in the details of this where there's been, instances where keeping these images for over, or these license plate readings over 24 hours has helped in a couple cases, but there are thousands and thousands of license plate reads in here that just are just sitting there and have no reason to be held by public officials. They need to be erased. So I'm really kind of upset that as a representative of myself, as a voter in the city of Montclair, that you're going to write a letter of opposition to this bill that allows, a little bit of privacy to the residents of the city of Montclair. The fact that there's a bill being written to this means that when you guys try to placate me in the past, that there's enough rules and regulations to prevent any nefarious activities. This proves to me that those are not strong enough, and we need to take some action. So I would ask that the city council take a neutral stance, not an opposition stance in this, and not write a letter of opposition to this bill. And I would also ask that, being that has to be a bill written to prevent, bad apples taking these license plates, and the fact that we're even getting third-party information put into our database, which, I'm a little bit worried about that we at least get some kind of commission or something. Or I know that they said that there's audits for this, and but I've never seen one publicly put out into the public. So we need some kind of audit that the public can, or some kind of review that the public can make on these, on when these things are used. And I really strongly oppose that we're creating a letter on this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll start with Councilmember Lopez. And before you go, Mayor Pro Tem Rue and Councilmember Martinez, do you also want to speak?
No, it's not
No?
turning off.
Okay, no?
Yes, Mayor. I had a comment about item B1.
Item B1. Okay, I'll start with Councilmember Lopez then.
I was going to bring this up at the last meeting on April 19th because I hear this is the second time I see this in the staff report. It's regarding the $100,000 from SBCTA. Staff presents the item to us stating that we're going to get a $100,000 allotment from, or reimbursement from SBCTA. But the term used here is hopeful, and that it will be an amount up to. So I wanted to know, how solid is this commitment from SBCTA, and can they find a way to get around the justification for any type of invoice or reimbursement that we send them for the expense that we make with the bridge? That's my hesitation with this. I was silent on it last meeting. I see it pop up again, so I figured I better ask the question.
Well,
That's-
on the $100,000, I'll let Mr. Star go afterwards, but I know that the executive director for SBCTA told me that this will be going to a committee meeting, board meeting for approval. So he's already committed his staff to move forward with it.
Full amount regardless?
The $100,000.
Okay.
Mr. Starr, I don't know if, I have a question regarding that, but do you have anything else you want to add, or?
Well, that's what I would have said. The executive
Yeah.
director is supportive of this, and so we're just waiting for the board action.
Okay, and then, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment was actually just to commend the SBCTA for being so gracious and in cooperating with the city in that way. And am I mistaken that the $500,000 is considerably less than at the last meeting? I thought it was $750,000.
No, it's $500,000, although I expect that the actual cost will be significantly less than that.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you for working so hard to save us some money.
And I would comment, since I serve on the SBCTA board, if staff can keep me informed, because I actually would like to get SBCTA to reimburse us more than $100,000, which I believe the staff has had a discussion with SBC staff, and there's another competitive application we have to submit, from my understanding. Am I correct, City Manager Starr?
A competitive application for,
I was told that in addition to the $100,000, we may be able to apply for maybe $200,000
Oh, yes.
through a competitive process.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
if you keep me informed there, I appreciate it, and then I can have a discussion with the executive director to better understand what that process is.
Right, and as far as I know, the 100,000 from SBCTA is not a reimbursable, rather that is their commitment for their obligation, because the Pacific Electric Trail is operated by the county in cooperation with each of the cities along the
Right.
way. So the county has a sense of obligation in relation to replacement of the bridge.
And which I agree with you, I don't think we should be the only agency stuck with a bill, and once this is a multi-agency project. Okay, so let's do this. Councilor Lopez, it's tradition, if you pull it off, you have to make a motion. Unless you
Mr.
disagree with it.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt, hold on, I flipped the page.
It's item
We adopt
B1.
item B1 on the consent calendar.
Is there a second to the motion?
I will second that.
Okay. We have a motion with second by Councilman Rue, and of course, you can vote right now. And that is adopted 5-0. Okay, now,
Great. Have we voted on item B3?
and no,
Oh, okay.
we still on B3, so I'm going to go back to Mr. Lopez, who pulled item B3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. Just a technical issue I have with the report and the letter. The letter states that the letter of opposition would go to the Senate Appropriations Committee. What, and Mikey may be able to chime in because he explained what the city's practice is on a prior bill we did, SB 9, 2 weeks ago, that we wrote in opposition to. I want it clear that our letter of opposition, should we adopt this tonight, not just go to the Appropriations Committee, but that it follow the bill as it makes its way to the legislature if at any point we don't manage to stop it. That's what I want clear. So if it passes the Senate Approps Committee, I'd like the letter to follow the bill and go to the Senate floor, and if it passes that chamber, it goes to the Assembly. So our position is maintained throughout the legislative process.
Okay, so I assume that's part of your motion then?
Yes, then if that's
Okay.
the case, then I move item B, well, believe another colleague wanted to comment? No?
Nope.
Okay. Then I move item B3 with that stipulation, please.
I will second it.
Okay, we have first and seconded by Councilmember Rue. And I don't see anybody speaking, no speaking requests, so we will now go to voting, please. Okay, and that's also adopted 5-0. And just for clarification, even though if there is a motion made, we can still have comments and questions after the motion. So just want to make sure the colleagues are aware of that. So we are now done with the consent calendar, and now we go to the business item, which is consider adoption of resolution 21-3309. Mr. City Manager, staff.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Resolution Number 21-3309 makes certain findings for an exception to the 180-day wait period to hire back a CalPERS annuitant, in this case, Christine Caldwell, the city's former Deputy Director of Community and Economic Development. Under terms of the resolution, Mrs. Caldwell would be hired back for temporary part-time employment on or about mid-May of this year. Ms. Caldwell would be working on and completing a number of projects, including but not limited to 2 Trammell Crow housing projects, high-density projects that she has been working on. The Panera Bread project that would go at the former location of the Islands in the Target parking lot. The Village at Montclair development, which the council entitled back in December of last year. The Aqua Ridge Senior Living Assisted Facility, which is nearing completion on construction and should probably be open in June, I believe. The Reader Ranch, primarily through Community Development Block Grant funding. The housing element, she has been working on that. The Community Development Block Grant funding projects, including the Reader Ranch, is also another area that Ms. Caldwell has been diligently working on. And she's been a participant in updates to our general plan process. She will also, her participation is also necessary in relation to ordinance development. The Accessory dwelling unit requirements is an area that she has been working on. Seller communications, she has been working in that area as well. General plan zoning changes are an essential area, particularly as the council considers and adopts the general plan update that we will be bringing before you. And an inclusionary housing ordinance is something that we have been trying to update as well. Ms. Caldwell will also prove indispensable in assisting with the implementation of an upcoming reorganization of the Community Development Department, which will be broken down into the current Community Economic Development Department, which will be broken down into the Community Development Department and the Economic Development Department. Her specialized skills are necessary to ensure there is no backlog of work related to the projects that I just listed to you. City will not be recruiting for a direct replacement of Ms. Caldwell's position. Instead, the primary duties of that position will be broken up and redistributed through this reorganization element that will be part of the fiscal year 2021-22 budget that will be presented to you in June. Aside from that, the unique skills that she has brought to her job will be refocused to work exclusively in these projects that I just listed again to you. The position that she was assigned to was actually created for Ms. Caldwell. That's another reason why we will not be recruiting for that specific position, because when we looked at her skills and her abilities and the things that she was doing, she started with the city as a planner. Then she moved into the area of housing, and then in the area of economic development. So when Marilyn Stotts retired, this position was created. Ms. Caldwell was funneled into that position to work on all of these different areas. So it was a unique position, again, created for her, and it's not our expectation to go out and do a recruitment to replace that position. Rather, again, I've broken up those duties and will be reassigning them out through a reorganization element that will come to the City Council. Ms. Caldwell will be limited to 960 hours annually, and her part-time temporary employment is expected to continue for the balance of this fiscal year and into the next fiscal year as well. Her pay cannot exceed the maximum monthly base salary paid to other employees in similar positions, and there is a publicly available pay schedule that is available for people to look at, and it is used as a gauge for determining what a salary would be. She would effectively be placed at step D of the salary range that she left her employment position from. That was the salary range that she was at, and therefore we can't put her any higher than that, so she will be coming back at that hourly pay rate that she was assigned to previously. Fiscal impact for fiscal year 2020-21, the projected fiscal impact is $12,586 at 25 hours per week for up to 200 hours for the balance of the year. And in fiscal year 21-22, the salary impact will be presented in the proposed budget. Staff's recommendation is the City Council adopt Resolution Number 21-3309, making certain findings for an exception to the 80-day wait period pursuant to the California Government Code. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions to staff? Any comments? I don't see anybody wishing to speak as far as council members. So at this time, I'm going to ask, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt item 10A. Am I there? Yeah, we are there. Consider adoption of resolution number 21-3309, making certain findings for an exemption to the 180-day wait period pursuant to Government Code Sections 7522.56 and 2122(1)H of the CC.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a first and second by Councilmember Johnson. And I know Mr. Rue's not in it right now, but we'll go ahead and vote. Okay, so that's adopted 4-0 with Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Rue absent. Okay, next item on the agenda are communications. I'll start with the city attorney.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have the one item as indicated in the agenda, and that's to ask that the city council meet in closed session regarding labor negotiations with Mr. Starr and with the, concerning the employee associations listed. Other than that, I have nothing else this evening.
No, we're pulling the item. We're not proceeding with the closed session tonight. Yes.
Oh, I misunderstood, City Manager
Okay, so that's
Starr.
being pulled. Okay.
Okay. So I have no closed sessions. Thank you.
Okay, city manager.
I have no items this evening.
I'll start with myself then. And as announced at last meeting, we have an announcement of vacancies on the Planning Commission for 2 and the Community Activities Commission for 3. And the deadline for both positions will be this week on May 4 at 5:30, and you'll submit those to the city clerk's office for the deadline. I want to recognize that this meeting tonight, we're going to adjourn in the memory of Hollis Junkins. If you don't know who Hollis Junkins was, she was a member of the community, at that time, the Community Activities Commission, before it changed to a commission. And she served on a number of years of that committee, including chairperson. And she also served as the Montclair Senior Club president for a number of years. And she is going to be sorely missed. And again, we will adjourn this meeting in her memory of Hollis Junkins, a very special lady that I really enjoyed very much, and a big University Oregon football fan. We have spent the last 14 months, as I mentioned, out of these chambers, and we're back here. And one reason we're back here is because the number of cases, number of hospitalizations are way low. We are currently in the yellow tier. Every indication that if the public continues to get vaccinated, that we will hopefully have this coronavirus contained. Obviously, there's threats of the variants of this virus. I think the good news is that here in Montclair, we are probably around 48% of the population, the adult population in Montclair, 16 and over, either has received 1 dose or two doses of the vaccine, and which the good news is that's much higher than the county average of about, the county average is somewhere around 42%, and we're closer to 47%. Unfortunately, what's happening, not just here in this community, but throughout the nation, is we're starting to see a slowdown of the population going out and getting vaccinated. Perhaps maybe because we're beginning to open up and the cases are low, and perhaps members of the public believe they don't need to get vaccinated. And I can't really tell you how important it is. I've received my second vaccination 2 weeks ago. As of this Thursday, I'll be fully vaccinated. So if you have not been vaccinated and you're thinking about it, go get vaccinated. You got a family members, go get vaccinated. Let's fight this. Let's fight this virus. This virus is just like, we're at war with a foreign enemy, and we got to go out there. Unfortunately, we got to go out there and fight this. And this is how you fight this virus is through the vaccine, along with, of course, wearing our masks and other things. I do want to recognize, and I think our staffs play a very big role, is to work with the county. And Montclair now has a vaccine site at the Montclair Place. Obviously, the testing site is also now at the Montclair Place. And I also told the Montclair Kid this week will become a regional vaccination site. So this community is really stepping up between the testing sites and now the vaccination sites to fight this virus. So I'm really proud of that. I know I haven't been around for the last 2 meetings, but I just want to recognize the opening of AMC, which is great, and of course the opening of all the restaurants and other businesses, the indoor dining coming back. Greatly appreciate seeing all that. Finally, again, I said I was absent for the last 2 meetings. Last meeting actually took my daughter, and we spent 75 hours flying to New York and then Detroit, Chicago, visiting colleges. And I want to like to say that I'm proud to announce my daughter will be attending Loyola University in Chicago. So with that, I'm going to start with, of course, last time you have this rotation here, so I want to make this easy. I want to start with, I think I'm going to go with the Mayor Pro Tem, Rue, and then we'll go based on seniority from here. Does that sound good? And once in a while, I may change it around and start with the low seniority and go to the Mayor Pro Tem. So Mayor Pro Tem, Rue, you'll start.
That's fine with me. You could rotate it 1 week, start with me, another week, start with Councilman Martinez, just rotate back and forth. Anyway, first of all, I hope that your daughter is ready for the very cold Chicago winters. I have been there when it is 20 degrees and it's cold. So I know she'll be doing some shopping for heavy winter coats and gloves and things like that.
Thank you.
And good luck. Keep us updated. I would like to, first of all, commend the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff McMahon on what has become something in the national news. It's a cold case that they helped solve from 1980. In 1980, 2 bodies were found in the desert near Ludlow, California. At the time, they were unable to identify them. We didn't have the techniques we do today. And a few weeks ago, or maybe about a week ago, through work with the family members, they didn't know at the time who these people were. Family members over the years figured out what was going on. Through DNA testing, they were able to identify the bodies of Pamela Diane Duffy, who was 21 at the time of her murder, and William Everett Lane, who was 20 at the time of his murder. They were brutally murdered in the desert. It led to the capture of the person who actually committed the crime. So this was really something that, needed to be done. It's bringing closure to the family, and it's not only been on the front page of our local paper, it's been in news organizations across the country. I would like to also mention that in the news, the story of California has lost 1 congressional seat. We had 53, we're now down to 52. And it is not because our population hasn't grown. Our population has grown, but it hasn't grown as fast as other states. So we'll still be the largest congressional delegation in the nation. The reason for some of this, I won't go into tonight. There are a lot of different reasons, but I would hope that in the next 10 years, when we have the next census, everybody takes it as seriously as they can, and they do complete the census. California did have an undercount this year. It's important for cities because this is how we obtain some federal money. Your tax dollars that go to Washington, D.C., that come back here. And as of the end of 2020, California was still a net donor state. For every dollar we send to Washington, D.C., we received back about 82 cents. I would like to echo what the mayor said about receiving a coronavirus inoculation. If you can, if you are able to, please do so. There are so many sites, you don't always have to make an appointment. You can walk up to them. The side effects, I had very minimal side effects. It was vertigo. Other people may have more. I have a friend of mine who's over 80. She had no side effects whatsoever. It's important. It's better than spending your life on a ventilator. So if you're able to receive an inoculation, please do so. I also want to commend the mayor for adjourning in the memory of Hollis Judkins. Hollis was very, very active in this community. In fact, I know Mrs. Raft, you and I and the mayor and everybody up here, we would see her at just about every event. And if Hollis wasn't at the event, it was noticed. She lived and breathed the city of Montclair, and she will be greatly missed. And then just to commend everybody that we are, open. It's good to see people in person. It's good to be able to talk to people in person. Yes, we're following all the rules, but I think it's so important that we have that one-on-one and the ability for those who are at home to be on Zoom or to be on a phone in some other way, because there's some people who may not be able to get to the meeting, or they may be arriving home late at night and they just want to tune in and see what we're doing at the tail end. So I think this is a good thing to do. When we had our last meeting in person, I said I was reminded of the song from World War II, "We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when." Well, a little over a year later, we have met again. We're going to continue to do the business of this city. Thank you, and please, everybody, be safe.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have 3 quick items. Number 1, for those people who have, through COVID, have been struggling to pay their rent, or property owners who have been struggling to collect rent, and for businesses who have also been struggling. There is some relief. It's through San Bernardino County. You just need to go to the San Bernardino County website and find the information there. The application for grants is available for you. So assistance is available. Please avail yourself to it. And also, there is assistance available through Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services. Some of you may recall it started out as a Neighborhood Partnership of Montclair, and then it broadened itself to many cities. But there's lots of assistance that's available for renters, for potential homeowners, and also for seniors who need assistance with keeping their homes updated or maintained. So those are two opportunities for people to receive some assistance. And then secondly, Mayor Dutre and I were honored today to watch a previously homeless family receive the keys to their new residence, thanks to the work of our code enforcement folks and for the support of Bethany Baptist Church and Christian Development Center, who donated to help purchase the mobile home that was purchased for them, as well as Metro Honda and Acura. So it was a very touching moment for us to be able to watch that previously homeless person be able to accept those keys, and she was beside herself with glee, and I don't blame her. And lastly, if you've just been just driving around, you see that there's lots of businesses that are hiring. So if you have anyone who has lost their employment because of COVID or want new employment, there's lots of businesses that are hiring, including John's Incredible Pizza. That's my own plug because my grandchildren want to go back there. But also, if you go to the Montclair Place website, there is a QR code on that website that lists, if you just scan the code, it lists all of the businesses inside Montclair Place that are hiring. And then the other thing that it has on that same little flyer that's on the Montclair Place website is you can scan that QR code for the deal of the day, because it's Mother's Day, and that's all. There's a bunch of there's a bunch of great deals on Mother's Day. It's my favorite time to shop. So please avail yourself to those two things so that you can, if you need employment, you can find it and you can get a deal for your mother. And for everyone in this room or who can hear me who is a mother, I wish you a very joyous Mother's Day this weekend. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Martinez.
Yes, thank you. So starting tomorrow at the Montclair Place, I believe where the New York and Company was, they are offering walk-in vaccinations from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. until Saturday. Not sure if that's going to be ongoing afterwards, but take advantage of that if you can, because it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think our city is really going out of its way to make sure that everyone gets vaccinated. And I have gotten both of my vaccinations, and I just want to put it out there that I've had no adverse side effects and just the same number of limbs that I've always had.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lopez.
A few items, Mr. Mayor. I attended on the 29th the SBCTA call. They were giving an update on the construction around the 10 freeway and the mess that is currently going on. Live very close to it myself, and Monte Vista is a main thoroughfare that I drive every day. Just some points that I wanted to pass on from that call to the residents. It's that up to 2 lanes during daytime hours will be shut down intermittently from now to at least 2 years out, so till 2023. 3 lanes will be closed at any given time on the 10 freeway from the Montclair stretch during nighttime hours, so 2 during the day, 3 during the night, and those can happen intermittently. There will be 20 more 55-hour closures to come through the summer and the winter, and Montclair could possibly be affected. They hadn't said so. The area regarding MacArthur Park, I know Mr. Polito's in the room, and actually Mr. Rue is a resident up in that way. They are, according to them, they're advancing towards completion, so I know that those headaches will soon be alleviated. I know that the mayor and I met with SBCTA staff and our staff with residents there about a month or 2 ago. I'm hoping those items are of concern. I will be reaching out, or Mr. Mayor, if you can pass on the word, I'm going to hit home this point about Southbound Monte Vista traffic, just north of the 10. Just about 3 days ago, there was a pretty bad accident involving some cars there. As you're going southbound, you try to merge into that left lane because there's no longer two southbound lanes. Most residents, I think, that drive this area regularly get it and know what to do. I think it's the visitors that come into our town don't realize that, so they try to come in real quickly. I know myself and family have been involved in near misses at that site. If there could be signage way back at Marino and Monte Vista, that would be ideal, just to warn people.
If you could send me an email, that I appreciate
Will
it,
do.
and I can forward
Will
that
do.
to SBC staff. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Bill?
Benson as well.
Yes. Yeah, well, Benson is a whole other animal, but comparable to that. I'm going to hit home another point that I really would like to see. I know at the April 19th meeting, I did request that we have a presentation from staff on the issue of fireworks. I will say that I appreciate the report that I got from City Attorney Robbins. I do have it in my hand. I haven't read it all entirely. That was from the, back then, Attorney General Kamala Harris regarding fireworks and fines. Thank you to our police chief who's in the room with respect to questions I had regarding infractions, misdemeanors, and the difference between citations that could be issued through the code enforcement administrative end and those that are considered fines. Now, having said that, my interest in this issue did occur from the incident that happened in Ontario. I've had residents come and ask me, do we have anything that can be done to prevent this? What can we increase fines to exorbitant amounts? I found out that the answer is no, and I found out that the state kind of ties our hands in that regard in one aspect. But I have some questions regarding that because there's some information that a county supervisor released regarding a different scale of fines, so there's an inadequacy. I still would like for there to be a presentation to us on the issue, one, so residents know that we're looking into it, two, so they could be just as educated as I was on the issue, and three, that since it's a timely topic and 4th of July is coming up, that there's information that can be given, the education process can get out there, hopefully the press picks it up, we can then put things in the press, we could look at our ordinances with respect to administrative fines and regular fines, and to see if we could possibly make changes to those, entertain the option, whatever, of allowing safe and sane as an alternative, whatever the case might be. I'd like to have that discussion soon, before the issue dies down. I don't know, Chief, if you received any calls last night and this morning on San Bernardino Street, on the north side of San Bernardino, facing even Harvard Street. We had the pyrotechnic type fireworks go off last night, and then they were going off at 6 a.m., 6:30 this morning, waking up residents. The whole damn street was up probably. I don't know if you got any calls on that. If you do, I'd be interested to see if any calls did come in, the volume. But we do have a problem. I know that there's probably a few houses that we could identify that are the problem on that street, but they weren't a problem 6 months ago or so. But anyhow, I think the issue warrants a discussion brought to council. That would be my request. If I need to seek unanimous consent, I would ask that my colleagues entertain that motion. I do have a couple more, but yes, go by all means.
I just wanted to answer your question, like if you wanted to know if we had any calls. I didn't see anything specific on our log. I would have to look. It is possible we got calls for that, especially if you're indicating the type of activity that was occurring there. I would just have to look at it, but I can get back with you on that.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I think on the question of fireworks, the chief, if you can stay there for a second. This is a subject that we have been dealing with for a number of years, not just Montclair, it's every community. Unfortunately, it's gotten worse. And unfortunately, I wish the state of California, when you drive into the state of California, when they do the agriculture check, they also have a check for fireworks. We bring in illegal fireworks into California, but it doesn't take place. But I would ask, I know in the past, we talked, Chief, and I think the department is looking at issuing a letter here soon. But nevertheless, at the appropriate time, if you can come back and give us a presentation what the department will be doing. I know traditionally we've done reader boards. We're going to send a letter out. I know that we'll be adding more additional patrols as we get closer to July the 4th. If you just kind of, I don't know, the next meeting or when you think you're ready to come here and just kind of give us a brief presentation on fireworks we'll do it under council communication, so.
Yeah, I can do that in the future if
Yeah.
that's what you would like me
Yeah.
to do. We are, just so you know, because there's talk about making changes and things like that. It might be a little late to the game to be making some of those changes at this point in time because we do have to do advance notice to the public, and we've already been doing the letters and submitted them to be included in mailers to the citizens. That has to happen well in advance of the 4th of July because of the way the mailing process goes. But we did do some additional types of enforcement activities, some additional undercover type activities last year that were proving to be beneficial. That was not only occurring here in our community, but also in allied jurisdictions that both brought each of us to their own cities. In fact, San Bernardino actually was looking at dealing with a situation of some illegal fireworks occurring in their community, and it actually brought them to our city in which the fireworks were being sold out of a local business, and they were able to capture 300 pounds of illegal fireworks in that situation. So we were doing things of that very same nature that last year, and our hopes is to be working on things of that nature this year much earlier on so we can have a much greater impact. And hopefully we don't have a situation occurring that occurred in Ontario. I don't believe that we do, but, of course, that's, they didn't know that that was occurring in their community as well. And, it was just an unfortunate event. So I'll let you know a little bit more about some of the things that we're doing. We're in the process of getting new magnetic signs for all the city vehicles and things like that. And so, like I said, we have to do that well in advance of the 4th of July. So we may be going along with some of the protocols and the fine ratings that we had already established in the previous years. If we do anything that we are able to make changes to, some of that notification to the public might have to come in the later, maybe the following year or something like that, because I can't get all that stuff prepared well in advance and, go through this whole process. Seemingly not late, but a little bit late for the year for what we need to do. So, but yeah, I'll come back with you whenever you guys would like me to talk
I know
about
I'm
it.
interrupting the Councilman Lopez's time here, but you mentioned something, are the regional chiefs, the San Bernardino County chiefs, each department talking about more aggressive undercover actions, is starting earlier? Is there more discussion among you chiefs?
There has been some discussion on that, partly because of the nature of the different platforms in which people sell merchandise nowadays, particularly like OfferUp and Craigslist and things like that. And a lot of those platforms are being utilized for illegal sales.
Right.
They're trying to do it in a covert way, and it takes a little bit of work to figure out what they're doing that particular year. But once you get on the track of what's actually happening, the efforts are to try to capture those individuals that are selling. And quite honestly, sometimes it's happening in your own community, but sometimes it's happening in a neighboring jurisdiction. One of the situations of the persons we were dealing with last year was actually living in Pomona. So even though it's not an arrest, maybe not be happening in your own immediate community, it still has ties and connections. Because like I said, San Bernardino was trying to deal with somebody selling illegal fireworks in their city, but it was coming from here. And so it's happening across the board in different jurisdictions, but we're all doing our very best at trying to combat that issue and try to mitigate it as much as we can.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Avels. Two other quick items. Mr. Starr, if you can send me follow-up with respect to Mr. Solis's issue. You guys already talked to him, you told me, but I don't know if you got my email, but if you can just send me the correspondence as to the follow-up with respect to that, please, I'd appreciate it. And then new issue for staff. Mr. Gary Stavel, who's a resident here in Montclair, and I'll pass this on to staff, but I promised him I'd bring it up to council. He's a little upset because he said he's contacted staff during the, when the buildings were shut down. There's a wire from the street lights on his, in front of his house on Ramona that is broken. He called the fire department. Edison was then called in return, and they didn't do anything about it except cut the tree down. They didn't address the wire. But he does say that his tree is dying. It is a city tree. He's asking for some assistance for city staff to address it. And I just told him I would pass this item on. I'll get you the details via email, and you could forward it to staff. But if you could look into that for Mr. Stovall, that'd be appreciated. And then just a point of personal privilege at the moment, this is my first time in chambers, sitting in this chair as a council member. I am grateful and humbled for the honor. This chair has a little bit of significance for me. The person that occupied this chair when I first got involved in Montclair politics, and it was actually the first time I walked into these chambers, was with the introduction from a councilwoman, Dolly Lumen, at the time, who sat in this seat for 16 years. She was the first woman elected to this council, and one little known fact about her, her maiden name was Lopez. She was the first Latin elected to the city council in the city of Montclair. Of course, you wouldn't know that based on her name. She took obviously her married name, so her name was Dolly Lumen. But she no doubt was the first Latin elected in this city. And I am honored to sit in this seat where she sat. A colleague of mine that also helped me get a start in Montclair sat in this seat. That was Mr. Hackett. I knew Mayor Reinhardt. I knew then Councilman Eaton, who became Mayor Eaton, and others at the time in the early 1990s. It's a humbling experience. It's a little odd and different to sit on this side and look out that way, as opposed for 20-plus years looking in the audience and looking this way. But it's an honor I take seriously, don't take lightly. I think it's interesting. Perhaps we won't get into any heated discussions, but it's funny to see us all in our little hockey penalty boxes here with our plexiglass and whatnot. That's the first thing I thought of when I sat here. I thought, man, it looks like we're in hockey penalty boxes, and start pounding the plexiglass. But anyhow, I appreciate the honor, the time. I look forward to being here in person. This is kind of what I look forward to, so it's a little surreal, and I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
I think we remember all of our first times sitting up here. It was surreal for me too, my first time. I do want to wish City Manager Starr good luck. And then I know that Marsha Richter will serve as your acting, along with Mikey Fuentes, and have a speedy recovery and get back here soon. Okay? Thank you. So we will adjourn this meeting tonight in the memory of Community Activities Commissioner Hollis Juggins. This meeting is now adjourned.